The moment Boone Maddox stepped into Dusty Bell's saloon, the air changed. It felt like the whole room held its breath. Men froze mid-drink. The piano player missed a key. And June Delane, the barefoot waitress who learned long ago how to disappear while standing in front of people, felt her heart stop for one long second. Her bare feet swept across the dirty floorboards. Years of splinters had toughened her heels, but even tough skin could bleed. She carried a tray of whiskey glasses with practiced silence. Nobody ever noticed her. Nobody ever cared to. That was her way of surviving. But Boone noticed her. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and it felt like two broken worlds recognizing each other. June had been in this saloon since she was 17. By 22, she had stopped counting days. She lived by simple rules. Serve drinks. Endure the hands that grabbed her waist. Keep her head down. Don't think about escape. Life in Coyote Ridge didn't offer dreams, only debts. But this giant cowboy with shoulders like a barn door and a voice carved from stone looked at her as if she was not invisible, as if she mattered. Boone Maddox hadn't spoken to a woman in 3 years, not since he returned from the war with nightmares and a fortune in cattle. Iron Bluff Ranch sat on the richest land in the county, 6,000 acres of open space, a house big enough for a family. Rooms built for children who never came. His life felt too quiet, too empty, even with all his wealth. Then he saw June. The saloon noise faded when he walked toward her, his shadow swallowing the floorboards. June's tray trembled. Whiskey spilled down her worn dress. "You'll give me 5 sons and never work again," Boone said. Not a question, not a request, a promise, a future spoken in 7 simple words. Every man in the saloon went silent. Marshal Kellogg's smirk curled from his corner table. Trouble, he thought. A woman always made trouble. And trouble was exactly what he wanted for Boone Maddox and his land. June didn't understand what was happening. She had never been claimed. She had never been protected. She only knew survival. She could not remember the last time someone looked at her without wanting something. But Boone wasn't looking with desire. He was looking with certainty, determination, a quiet promise that startled her more than any rough hand from the saloon ever had. Harker, the saloon owner, pushed his way forward with a greedy smile. "She's not for sale," he said, "at least not without paying her debts." In one smooth motion, Boone dropped a leather pouch of gold onto the counter. The sound rang across the saloon like a shot. "Her debt is paid," he said, "including whatever new amount you plan to invent." Harker's smile vanished. Kellogg's hand twitched toward his gun, but before he could draw, 2 of Boone's ranchmen entered, standing like stone pillars at the door. No one dared move. A miner in the corner spat. "What's Maddox want with used goods?" he muttered. June heard it. She always heard it. Every cruel word, every reminder of what she was to them. Her throat tightened. She didn't know if this cowboy was rescuing her or trapping her in some new prison. She only knew one thing. He wasn't afraid of anyone in this room. She whispered, "Why me?" Boone answered softly, but his voice carried through the silence. "Because you survived, and surviving is what my land needs most." June didn't remember deciding to follow him. She only remembered the way the room felt when she stepped outside, lighter, as if dust was falling from her soul. Boone lifted her small cloth bundle into his wagon, a hairbrush, a faded picture of her mother, a tiny book she taught herself to read, all she owned in the world. He helped her climb into the wagon with one gentle hand, the first gentle touch she had felt in years. Coyote Ridge faded behind them. June didn't look back. She was afraid that if she did, the town would swallow her again. They traveled in silence for a long time. When they stopped to water the horses, Boone handed her a wrapped package. Inside was a pair of boots. "No one is barefoot on my land," he said. They were too big, but she slid them on anyway. She felt taller, safer, as if she had stepped into a different life. Iron Bluff Ranch rose out of the golden grass like something out of a dream. A wide house with big windows, strong fences, clean water, cattle grazing in the distance. This was a world she had never imagined for herself. A man with sun-worn skin came out of the barn and nodded at Boone. "Everything's ready, boss." June stood stiffly, afraid to move, afraid this was all another trick. But Boone picked up her bundle and led her into the house. "This is your home now," he said. "You can stay or go, but if you stay, the promise stands. 5 sons, and you will never work again unless it's for yourself." June stepped into the room he had prepared for her. A real bed, a quilt in sunrise colors, a dresser with a mirror, curtains she could close, a room that belonged only to her. She touched the bed carefully. When it didn't disappear, tears filled her eyes. For the first time since she was a child, she slept safely. And for the first time in his life, so did Boone Maddox. June woke the next morning to sunlight filling the room, warm and gentle on her face. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. Then she sat up and saw the quilt, the curtains, the wooden dresser, and her heart tightened with something she did not yet know how to name: safety. Downstairs, she found Boone sitting at a long table big enough for a family of 12. Only 2 places were set. At the stove stood Mrs. Fletcher, a gray-haired woman who smelled of flour and soap, turning bacon in a cast-iron pan. "This is Mrs. Fletcher," Boone said. "She comes 3 days a week." June stared at the plates. Eggs, bacon, warm biscuits, even preserves. It was more food than she usually saw in 2 days of saloon work. She ate slowly at first, waiting for someone to take it away. When no one did, she ate until her stomach ached. Boone watched her quietly, not judging, not rushing, just watching like a man learning something important. After breakfast, he showed her the house, the library filled with books she didn't know how to read, the parlor where a piano sat untouched, his mother's piano, the hallway lined with rooms waiting for children. June walked with her hands clasped, afraid to brush against anything. Each drawer she opened, each door she peeked through, made her heart race. The world she came from punished curiosity. This house welcomed it. That afternoon, a wagon arrived carrying packages, dresses in soft colors, undergarments, nightgowns, all in her size.
"Mrs.
Fletcher arranged it," Boone said. "Said you'd need proper clothes." June didn't answer. Her throat felt too tight. Days became weeks. June slowly learned how to breathe in a world where no one shouted at her, where footsteps didn't mean danger, where she could walk a hallway without shrinking. She began trusting the silence. Each morning she ate breakfast with Boone. He didn't talk much, but his eyes always found her. When he rode out to work the ranch, she watched him disappear across the fields, a giant shaped by land and loneliness. June filled her days with simple things she had never been allowed before: rearranging drawers, washing her hair with warm water, sitting on the porch with a cup of tea and watching the wind move through tall grass. Sometimes she still jumped at sudden sounds. Sometimes memories grabbed her like cold hands. But the fear faded a little more each day. A month passed before she returned to town. Mrs. Fletcher took her to the small general store near the ranch. The owner's wife called her Mrs. Maddox without hesitation. June almost corrected her, then swallowed the words. For the first time in her life, people stepped aside when she walked past. But when they visited Coyote Ridge proper, the whispers began. "Saloon trash," one woman murmured loudly. June kept her eyes straight ahead, but the familiar sting returned like old bruises. She didn't cry. She just pulled her new boots tighter around her feet. Marshal Kellogg intercepted them. His vest stretched across his belly, his badge pinned crooked. His eyes crawled over her like something rotten. "Tell Maddox I'll be coming by soon," he said. "Got questions about borders." June climbed back into the wagon with shaking hands. Mrs. Fletcher squeezed her shoulder. "He won't hurt you here," she whispered. "Not anymore." But that night, Boone and Hank spoke on the porch in voices tight with worry. Harker filed a complaint, Hank said. Claims June stole from the saloon. June gasped from the shadows of the doorway. She owned nothing worth stealing. They're using it as an excuse, Boone growled. Kellogg wants the Northland. Harker wants revenge. Sunday morning proved him right. Kellogg arrived with 3 deputies. Dust clouds rose behind their horses as they rode up to Iron Bluff. June watched through the window, her heart pounding like it wanted out of her chest. Boone stepped out onto the porch, wide as a barn door, calm as a still lake. "What do you want?" he asked. "Search warrant," Kellogg said, waving a paper. "Stand aside." "You step inside without my permission," Boone said. "You better be ready to die on my land. No shouting, no threat, just calm truth." The air turned sharp as a blade. Kellogg knew Boone meant it. "You made trouble for yourself," Kellogg spat. "That girl's nothing but a problem." But they retreated. They always retreated from a man like Boone Maddox. June found him still standing on the porch long after the dust settled. She gathered her courage and asked, "Why did you defend me? You barely know me." Boone looked at the horizon for a long moment before answering. "Knowing you isn't the point," he said. "You're mine to protect. That's enough." His words didn't trap her. They steadied her, anchored her. For the first time in her life, she felt like someone saw her as more than what men wanted from her. Days passed. Summer heat rolled over Iron Bluff, and June's body softened with good food and rest. Her cheeks glowed again. Her steps grew lighter. Sometimes she caught Boone looking at her with something she couldn't quite name. One evening at dinner, she reached for his hand. His fingers closed around hers, strong and gentle at the same time. Neither spoke, but something shifted. That night, a thunderstorm shook the house. June had always feared storms. She found Boone standing in the dark parlor, watching lightning paint the sky. She stepped close. He put his arm around her for the first time. By the next month, Boone's quiet gaze felt different, and June found herself looking back. Their first kiss came slow and sure, like something that had been waiting for years. Winter arrived early. June felt changes in her body before she dared to speak them. One night by the fire, she took a breath. "I'm carrying your child," she said, "your first son." Boone froze. Then he knelt and lowered his forehead to her still flat stomach, so gentle it broke her heart open. The next morning, hammers echoed across the ranch. June went to the porch and saw Boone building a new room. "A nursery," he said. "It should face the sunrise." June touched her belly and whispered a promise to the child inside. A promise of safety. A promise of love. But danger was coming. And Iron Bluff would soon become a battleground for the family she never thought she would have. Samuel Maddox entered the world on a frozen January morning. Snow piled high against the windows, and wind pushed at the house like a living thing. June labored for 12 hours, gripping the headboard with trembling hands, while the midwife whispered steady encouragement. When the baby finally cried, loud and strong, Boone nearly collapsed with relief. Samuel was big like his father, with dark hair and bright eyes that seemed to focus from the very first day. When Boone lifted him, his enormous hands shook. June watched the toughest man in the territory crumble into quiet tears as he held his son against his chest. Life shifted after that. Spring came with new calves and growing grass, but word traveled fast that Marshal Kellogg had convinced the governor to recheck land grants in the county. Hank brought the news with a grim look. "It's aimed at us," he said. "They're saying the north border might belong to Harker after all." Before Boone could reply, the first fire came. Someone had set the north pasture ablaze during a dry spell. Smoke rolled across Iron Bluff for miles. Boone and his men fought it for 2 days. They saved most of the land, but a small cabin burned to ash. June held Samuel close, feeling the old fear creep up her spine. Trouble wasn't done. Harker bought up 3 more ranches near Iron Bluff. Kellogg spent more nights at Harker's new saloon, bragging that certain folks won't last the year. Their meaning was clear. June was pregnant again when the first bullet shattered the kitchen window. She dropped to the floor, shielding Samuel with her body as glass rained down. Boone sprinted inside, lifted both of them, and checked every corner of the house before speaking. "No one works alone anymore," he told his men, and June and the boy stayed guarded at all times. The hearing came in September. June insisted on going. She wouldn't let Boone stand alone. They rode to the county seat, with Samuel nestled between them. The courthouse was packed. Men leaned forward, whispering bets on who would win. Boone presented the original land grant, the governor's letters, everything in perfect order. Harker's lawyer argued forgery, but the room fell silent when the judge confirmed the documents were real. Boone had won. But as they stepped outside, Kellogg blocked their path. "You won today," he said, "but that girl and her bastard don't belong in this county. Accidents happen to people who forget their place." Boone didn't shout. He didn't reach for his gun. He grabbed Kellogg by the throat and lifted him off the ground with one hand. "You come near my family again," Boone said quietly, "and they'll bury you in pieces." Kellogg's face turned red. His boots kicked at air. When Boone finally dropped him, the marshal stumbled back like he'd seen death itself. From that day forward, Iron Bluff became a fortress. Boone hired more men, added iron bars to the windows, made June practice shooting every afternoon, even with her growing belly. June wasn't afraid. She knew how far Boone would go to protect his family. Daniel Maddox arrived in October, fast and fierce. Boone caught him with the same hands that once built fences and tamed wild horses. June held both her sons and felt a strength she never knew she had. Winter passed without attacks. Spring brought new grass and new hope. Then news spread like wildfire. Kellogg had been removed as marshal. Enough ranchers had complained about his corruption. His badge was taken, his power gone. When June carried their third son, Matthew, the ranch grew again. Iron Bluff expanded to 10,000 acres. Harker's empire collapsed under fraud charges, and Boone bought his foreclosed lands at auction. A victory so complete the whole county talked about it. June changed with the land. The barefoot girl who once poured whiskey now sat in church with her sons beside her, wearing boots finer than any lady in town. Travelers whispered stories about her aim with a rifle, her sharp business sense, and her calm strength beside her giant husband. Their fourth son, James, grew up chasing calves between the barns. Their fifth son, Joseph, was born 10 years to the day after Boone walked into Dusty Bell. The entire county celebrated, sending gifts and congratulations. Even the territorial governor wrote a letter. Coyote Ridge changed too. The saloon was rebuilt into a general store. Streets widened. New families arrived. Many forgot who June used to be. But she remembered. I wonder why. Every time she rocked a baby to sleep, every time she watched Boone walk the fields at dusk, every time she stood on the porch of the home he gave her. On their 20th anniversary, Boone handed her a small wooden box. Beside it were the first pair of boots he'd ever given her. "You kept these?" June whispered. "To remember," Boone said. How it started. Behind them, their sons' voices echoed across the land. Strong young men who would one day run Iron Bluff. A legacy built not just on acres and cattle, but on a promise spoken in a dusty saloon. A promise Boone Maddox kept every day of his life. June closed the box gently and leaned into him, her heart full. She never walked barefoot again.